Hey guys, welcome back to the Pausing Porn Podcast, the podcast that is here to support you in your healing journey from compulsive porn use. As someone who's been through the recovery journey themselves, this podcast was created to give you the knowledge, tools, and support needed to help you make the progress that you're looking for. I'm your host, Mark, and in this week's episode, I'm going to answer the question, is porn an addiction? I'll share what the scientific community says, what my opinion is, why it even matters, and if you believe you're a porn addict, should you even call yourself one? So let's get started. I've said it before, you've said it before, and we've all heard it. The term porn addict or porn addiction. It's widely accepted and used all the time, but is it real? Is porn an actual addiction? The answer the scientific community says for this question is no, it is not an addiction. Or at least it's not classified as one as of right now, November 2025. Globally, the World Health Organization is the organization that's responsible for this type of classification. And the most recent classification they gave was back in 2019, and this is where they recognize problematic porn use as a compulsive sexual behavior disorder, or CSBD, but not as an addiction. You guys might have heard of the DSM-5. If not, that's okay. The DSM-5 is essentially the rulebook psychiatrists and psychologists use to define what counts as a mental disorder. The only behavioral addiction listed in the DSM-5 as of right now is gambling. And this was only listed back in 2013, actually. But as of today, porn addiction is not listed in the DSM-5. And it was rejected before the DSM-5 was even published. Now, does this mean that porn will never be classified as an addiction? No, it doesn't. But as of today, in November 2025, it is not classified as one. Before we get any further, I want to give my 2 cents on this. I will first say that I am not a healthcare professional. I'm just someone who's lived through compulsive porn use, went through the recovery journey, and wants to share their experience based off of that. So if you ask me the question, can porn be an addiction? I would say yes, it can. And I say that because it fits almost every single marker that it defines an addiction. Like first, let's start with loss of control. I know I've experienced it. You guys probably as well. You've probably experienced loss of control with porn in your life. Like I've shared this before, but the amount of times that I've sworn off porn, I would say I'm never watching it again, right? And then within 4 hours, I would go back to it. Like it's so many times I can't even count. I've watched it at work. I've watched it in the same bed as my ex-partner when she was asleep. I've watched it in public. I have felt that loss of control. And I know tens of thousands of other men have felt the same loss of control when it comes to porn. The second thing I want to mention that's common with addiction across the board is continuing use despite negative consequences. So I'm sure you guys are in the same boat as me. I've 100% had that. And not just a couple negative consequences, countless negative consequences. If we talk physical negative consequences, I got porn-induced erectile dysfunction very badly, and I would continue porn despite that. Consequences on my mental health. There's shame, anxiety, brain fog. The list goes on. I lost friendships because of porn. Like I can be here all day, and I'm sure you guys can make a huge list as well, but despite those negative consequences, you continued. The third one is craving. So this is an easy one. If you're listening to this podcast, I know you're the same as me, and you know firsthand that porn has a craving effect, and it comes with these intense urges to watch porn. I don't think I need to go much deeper. The fourth one is tolerance. This is another thing too. Like when I think back to when I was 10 years old and I was first introduced to porn, I would watch it maybe once a month, maybe once every few months. Like I don't remember exactly, but I just know it wasn't frequently. And over the years, year by year, I would need to watch more and more and more. And it gets to the point I remember in 2020, when my porn use was almost at its peak or around its peak, I've shared this before with you guys, but there was days that I would call in sick to work and would watch it for 10 plus hours straight. That is because the tolerance was built up. And then there's also escalation of use too that comes with tolerance, right? Like when you're compulsively watching porn, you're not watching the same stuff year over year over year for decades. It constantly changes. That's why there's countless straight men that watch trans or gay porn out there. Not because they're secretly bi or secretly gay, is because it's something novel and it feels more intense. For me personally, I used to spend money that I didn't have on cam sites while I had a partner as well. This wasn't something that fit in my real sexual desires. It was just something that was novel and felt much more intense. The fifth thing I want to mention is withdrawal. So porn is a little bit different, especially when you compare its intensity of withdrawal compared to substance abuse, where it's next to nothing. But there are definitely symptoms of withdrawal. What a lot of men experience, like I have personally, is the flatline period. Then there's also sleep issues, irritability, anxiety. Like there are real withdrawals that many men experience when it comes to having abstinence from porn. And the sixth common factor, and the final one I have on my list, is when it becomes the central focus of your life. I noticed this in my life, and I'm sure you guys are the same. Back when my porn use was compulsive, I would choose to miss work. I would avoid social interactions. I'd spend money I didn't have. I'd distance myself from my partner and from my family. I was in poor physical shape. My mental health was terrible. Like porn became the central focus over everything. And it didn't start that way. When I was introduced to it when I was 10 years old, it did not start that way. It is year over year, it slowly becomes the central focus. So that's my list. You can see it ticks every single box from loss of control, compulsive use despite negative consequences, craving, tolerance, withdrawal, and central focus of life. Take a moment and think back on your own life too. Does porn tick all of those boxes as it did for me? And there's one final thing I want to mention too, as to why I believe porn can be an addiction, is that I've had other real addictions. Like tobacco, that is classified as an addiction by every major medical and psychological organization in the world. And I was addicted to cigarettes and nicotine. Whether it was vapes or smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day, I was addicted to them. But I also quit. And I will tell you, it was 10 times, no, 100 times easier to quit smoking than it was for me gaining a life free from porn. Additionally, I used to misuse stimulant prescriptions. Was it to the point that it was an addiction? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But once again, I was able to stop these, and it was way, way easier than it was for gaining a life free from porn. I've also seen it firsthand too. Like when I was in an old recovery group, we would meet in person, and most men there, including myself, would use other drugs to enhance their porn viewing experience. Most of them there would use cocaine when they watched porn to have a more intense experience. And just as I said, the main problem was not the cocaine, right? The main problem for me wasn't nicotine or stimulants, it was porn. Now that we've covered what the scientific community says, that porn is not an addiction, and what my opinion is, that it can be an addiction, let me now tell you why this even matters. The first reason I see it matters is for greater research and funding. Since it's not listed as an addiction, there's less studies on how porn affects the brain, less research on what treatments actually work, and slower progress on effective recovery programs. Whenever I read the scientific papers that are released on problematic porn use, it seems to be the same few people that are conducting research on it. And in the same instance, substance abuse and gambling get much more research and funding since they're actually classified as an addiction. My second reason is for treatment and insurance. Since it's not classified as an addiction, there's far less treatment options. And in the cases where people need far greater support, I don't think insurance will cover the therapy or rehab costs that are needed. And don't get me wrong, there still is treatment, there still is support. We have CSATs, like the Certified Sex Addiction Therapists, and there's 12-step recovery groups, but there isn't the same support or availability of resources versus if you were someone with a substance addiction. And finally, without a real diagnosis, I think some people will still feel lost when it comes to porn. Like, think about it. Imagine being an alcoholic if there was no real diagnosis for it. You'd probably just assume it was a personal flaw or something weak in your character. That's what happens with a lot of men for porn. They don't see it listed as an addiction, or most people don't even hear that there's other men struggling with compulsive porn use. So they start to believe their problems come from their character, that they're a pervert, or they have an abnormally high sex drive. When there's no official framework or a name for what you're struggling with, shame fills in those gaps. You don't reach out for help. Instead, you hide and you try to do it all alone. That is why I think it's important for compulsive porn use to get listed as an addiction. We would get more research on how to help, would have better treatment and support options, and there would be more acceptance on the problem rather than keeping it secretive and in shame. So if you believe that porn is an addiction, and you believe that you have a porn addiction, should you label yourself as a porn addict? I think it depends. And let me explain why. This label can work differently based on the person. And I learned that firsthand in a recovery group that I used to attend. In that group, I would say 95% of the people were dealing with a substance addiction. And some of those people were required to go to the group by the courts. Then I would say the other 5% were people like me. They'd struggle with porn, sex, or gambling. Anyways, I remember day one of the group. The counselors and therapists that were organizing it, they made a point that they would not call anyone in the room as an addict. And everyone attending the group were not allowed to call anyone else an addict. If you wanted to self-identify as one, that was okay. But they would never call you an addict, and you cannot call anyone else one. And the reason behind this is the label addict can be harmful for someone. For one, it can create an identity behind it. If you tell yourself you're an addict, it might reinforce that is who you are, rather than it's just something that you're experiencing. It can also create hopelessness for some. Like, think about the word addict. It's a scary word, it's not a fun word. So if you call yourself an addict and feel like you'll always be an addict, or it's impossible to recover, then that can work as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Calling yourself an addict can also create shame and separate you from others. And those are two things that I'm very vocal about with porn. How destructive shame and isolation can act. The real healing instead comes from acceptance and a connection. But then on the other side of things, if you find calling yourself a porn addict helps you take accountability and prioritize the problem without any negative consequences, then sure, this label can be helpful in your recovery. For myself, when I was going through recovery, I used to call myself that, a porn addict, because I didn't find it hurt my recovery, and it helped me take accountability as well as really prioritize my recovery. So try it for yourself. If you feel that you would fit the description as a porn addict, see how that label feels for you. If it helps you take recovery seriously without any consequences, like I found in my recovery, then you could try using it for yourself. But if you find that it makes you feel hopeless, or it creates an unhelpful identity, shame, or any other negative consequence, then you can find another way to label it where you have power over your label. All right, guys, that is it for today's episode. I really hope it helped you get some more information on what you're going through and what I provided can benefit your recovery. Even just 1% of it, because that's what makes the best results. It's very tough to make a complete 360 in your life, but if you focus on that 1% per day improvement, your results compound over time and lead to a better life overall. If you feel this episode made that 1% better difference, please leave a review or a comment letting me know. I want to help as many people as possible in their recovery journeys, and leaving a review helps more men find this podcast that need to hear it. So thank you for tuning in to this podcast episode today. Once again, I'm your host, Mark, and I'll catch you guys in our next episode next week. Have a good one, guys.